What's cracking, Cap City Church fam? Scott here with your daily Devo, and a special welcome to any visitors out there who happen to click on today's video. Thank you so much for joining us. It means the world to us that you take the time out of your busy and chaotic 2020 schedules to hang out with us and learn a little bit about the Bible. So thank you so much for tuning in. Well, if this is your first time checking us out, or even checking out one of my Devos, I have been walking us through the Book of Ruth on Thursdays, and if you haven't been following the series, you can certainly go back and check out the other videos, and that'll bring you up to speed. But if your time is short, I will give you the quick version. A dude named Elimelech moved his family of refugees from Israel to Moab. Elimelech's two sons married Moabite women, and then all three dudes kicked the bucket, leaving the three ladies as widows. Elimelech's wife, Naomi, begins her journey back to Israel, where she has family and a bit more of a support network. She convinces one of her daughters, Orpah, to not come with her, to go back to Moab and find a husband there, because chances are pretty good that she'll find a husband there. Not so great in Israel. And as we learned over the last couple of weeks, it's really important that a widow finds another man as soon as possible, especially if they don't have sons of their own to help provide for them. But her other daughter-in-law refuses. Ruth. She stays by her side. And once back in Israel, Ruth goes out to the local Social Security office to apply for welfare. And by Social Security office, I mean Boaz's field. And by welfare, I mean gleaning. And gleaning, as we talked about last week, was that social safety net that God had instituted in his law that essentially stipulated that when you're harvesting your field, not to harvest all of it, but to leave some for the poor and the down and out and the vulnerable to come and glean. And that way they can have some sustenance, they can be provided for under God's law. It is while she is gleaning that she meets the field owner, Boaz, who shows her a crazy amount of grace and generosity. He gives her a bunch of special privileges while she is gleaning, and he even sends her home with a ton of grain for her and her mother-in-law. And that is where we pick up the story today. So do me a favor, pause the video right here, go back, read chapter 3. We'll try to have a link to Bible Gateway in the description. You can follow that to the website, and it'll pop up Ruth 3 just like that if you don't have your Bible. So go ahead and pause and then come back and we'll chat. Have you ever had a friend that tried to set you up on a date? Isn't that the most awkward and uncomfortable thing ever? It is for me anyway. As a person in ministry, there is a kind of unspoken pressure to get hitched. I don't know why that is. For some reason, people just think that single ministers are weird or something. I don't know. I once served under a pastor who kept trying to hook me up with different chicks, including his own niece. And it would always make me feel so uncomfortable when he tried to do that, because that puts me in a weird position, right? Like I either have to reject somebody, or even worse, be rejected myself, and that is never fun, especially in a time where I'm just not ready to date, right? And so whenever he would try to hook me up with someone, I would always just awkwardly laugh and say, I just want to be a bachelor till the rapture. And if you go to church with me, you've heard me say that phrase over and over again. I kind of overuse it a little bit. Well, in our story, Naomi takes on the role as a matchmaker for her daughter-in-law, her widowed daughter-in-law, Ruth. And who would be a better match than Boaz? He is the kind of guy that I want to grow up to be. He is the man. So the two women hatch a plan, and it's a good plan, if not just a little bit scandalous, even even for today's standards among Christian circles, I cannot recommend the Ruth and Boaz method to dating. So here is what the girls come up with. The harvest is over. Now is the time for threshing. And threshing the grain is essentially just processing it so it is edible or consumable or able to be refined and made into wheat and then into bread, right? And so after a long day of threshing, Boaz eats and drinks until he is glad in spirit, and all of the Baptists just shuddered in fear. But don't turn me off quite yet. Just pretend that he was drinking grape juice and he was just happy after a good day of work. All right. Actually, if you are uncomfortable with the drinking, you are really going to be uncomfortable with what happens next. So Boaz passes out. He falls asleep from his grape juice, and Ruth sneaks in like a ninja and uncovers his feet, which could be and has been used as a euphemism for other things, but that we don't need to talk about that. Let's just take the Bible at face value that she just uncovered his feet. She awkwardly cuddles up next to his toes, and Boaz wakes up, and like anyone who fell asleep alone and woke up with an unexpected visitor, says, "Who's there?" Right? Have you ever woken up to a visitor in your bed? When I was in the Army, I had a roommate who came home from the bar while I was asleep, and I guess he was so glad in spirit that he forgot which was his bed, and he climbed into mine with me in it. And it was a twin. That night was not as romantic as Ruth and Boaz's night. Let me tell you that. That was a bad night. I actually had to get my neighbor to help me get him out of my bed. Well, anyway, Boaz wakes up and Ruth asks him to be her guardian redeemer, which essentially means, will you marry me, right? We have some gender role reversals here. She's the one that pops the question to him. So scandalous. Like, she's breaking all the rules in this story. What is a guardian redeemer? Well, a guardian redeemer is essentially a relative of influence and status who might reclaim or redeem what is lost. If someone fell on hard times and they had to sell their family land or even themselves into slavery, the guardian redeemer had the responsibility and the right to purchase it or them back. And if a guardian redeemer's brother died, he could also have the responsibility to provide his brother's widow with an heir that would not only carry on the name and business of the deceased, but it would also take care of his widow when she got old. He also could avenge the death of a relative by executing the murderer. So they can throw hands. And he cares for down and out relatives as well. Well, Boaz agrees to Ruth's request, but there's a catch. There is someone else who's actually first in line to play the role of the Redeemer. And next week, we are going to find out whether or not Boaz is going to get the girl. So stay tuned or tune in next week, and we'll see what happens. The story of Ruth and Boaz is a true story that God uses in His Word to foreshadow to us what Jesus does. Because Jesus is our guardian redeemer. When we were slaves to sin and destined for destruction, Jesus paid the ransom so that we could be free and brought into His family. He's also our protector. He fights our battles. I've heard many well-meaning Christians say something like, we need to take a stand for Jesus. And usually that means being very combative and obnoxious toward the culture in the public square. And sometimes the public square means social media. Now, there's nothing wrong with standing firm on biblical values and convictions as long as it's done in a loving and graceful way. The thing is, we don't need to take a stand for Jesus because He takes a stand for us. He fights our battles. He sticks up for us. If there is ever a day where we need to defend Jesus, that is a bad day. We might as well just pack it in, but thankfully that day will never come. But don't take my word for it. Check out Revelation 19, and you will see a fierce warrior Jesus that can throw hands like nobody's business. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed today's Devo. If you did, would you drop us a like and a comment? Have a great week. God bless you.